Welcome, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy Easter. Hope you had a good weekend. Here we are again, another Monday Lunch and Learn. With me again, well, my name's Lisa Redomozo. I have with me Teresa and also Lourdes, and we have Donna and Leah also online. So if you have any questions about materials or access to links or webinars, please go ahead and put those in the chat. Also, any other comments or questions that you may have regarding, or comments, or Lourdes is going to put some questions out there just to see how you guys are doing. If you could put those in the chat and then your questions in the Q&A, you can also ask anonymously if you'd like. So we're just here opening up to see the questions that we have. Uh, and then I'll just talk about, what I've been going through and what I've been kind of picking up on or focusing on certain sections of talent search, which again, this could be directly related to EOC, the same kind of trying to make mention of the priorities within the narrative, but not going overboard or having a separate section or a paragraph for them. And I'll just tell you, Teresa, you and I haven't really talked about it, and Lourdes, strategically where I'm thinking about putting things. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I have to keep reminding myself, though, that the priorities are not being scored. And that's different, and I had a couple of people email me stressing about them. And then I had to say, wait a minute, they're not being scored. So that should take some pressure off. The pressure, if anything, is getting it to fit on 3 pages, and then having it nearby. So when you go through the narrative, you can kind of pick up on where you can make mention of them, is more of the work. Writing of them, it's different. I've always written things to get scored. Um, and I'm struggling with well, it's not going to get scored, Lisa. So, what's the purpose? It's like almost like if you play a game and we're just playing for fun, right? And we say there's no, we want to play to win, I want to get scores. So, Teresa, putting you on the spot, I know you've been working on the priorities, but what is your take on the priorities and how can we get folks motivated to get started on them and not get stuck? I almost feel like you have to do them first before you go back and look at your narrative, and also let them know again, now that we have more people on board, that you are available to assist in that.
Okay, so as far as the priorities are concerned, we've kind of built them out as far as, what they should look like. I think the biggest piece is in agreement with Lisa. I found that I needed to go ahead and work on that before I started reading grants or giving feedback on grants because it did empower me to be better able. And of course, as you're writing, it will empower you to be better able to kind of digest and push the information into your proposal. And so a lot of the services we're already providing outside of the apprenticeship, but a lot of the elements in the absolute priority, I feel like it's a fit, and it definitely is not a far-reaching element of what we're doing. I have not looked at EOC. I'm still in the
Me too, right?
and just trying to grapple talent search. But from people that I've talked to who've asked me questions about EOC, they said that it's pretty much familiar to talent search with regards to the absolute and the invitational priorities. The other piece is definitely making sure that with your needs section that you have some elements of workforce development. That last section of talent search is where we're putting a lot of that information to kind of ground us in what we're speaking to from a data point with the Department of Labor and some local data that we have. So we're trying to put some of that information toward the end of the needs section. It could be built in some elements of the others, but the plan of operation is where we're finding where we need to do a little bit more adjusting. Um, there are some pieces that I've needed to take out. I think Lisa spoke to that last week. I've had to take out some components that I have felt very strong about, but also understanding, the bottom line is, am I answering the question and have I infused anything from the absolute and invitational priorities to support me? I also find that the program evaluation section as well is another section, and your commitments from institutions and things of that sort. Definitely finding some type of partner or getting some LOCs from those areas that I've traditionally not gotten, Workforce Investment Act or some of those other areas in your local community or at the state level. As far as
Mhm.
the invitational priority, you know um, there's been some creative ways to write that section. EOC, COE was very helpful Friday and Thursday with giving me more ideas. I think I've gotten too many ideas at this point, but definitely we've gotten that piece under control with our people that we're working with. So that's what we're doing. Up until the end of this week, we are still entertaining to support people with their invitational and absolute priorities, and then as well as serving as a reviewer, technical reviewer of your proposal. So if you need that support, I'll drop the information in the chat again. Just be able to email me, and then we'll send you some information.
Thank you, Teresa. That's exactly, I'm going through that as well. You mentioned the evaluation plan is the only plan I have not yet tackled. It's cooking in my head, but I have to like get all the other pieces done because it truly is more than ever a great closing section. So I had to get everything else done, and then I'm gonna shift it around. The other thing you said that struck home with me is I'm so used to, I'm in love or was in love with some of my formatting and the way I answered questions in the proposal because I've always been about making it more of an operational manual so that a person could take it and with more details run with it and implement the program. I don't have room to do that this time. I feel like I have to get rid of that focus that I had before and not go into so much detail about, for example, the plan to inform, I think will barely be looked at. The program management is also something that I cut in half to make room for other things. Applicant and community support section used to be a slam dunk, and now I feel that I have to take some partners out, like the facilities or transportation, as commitments from the institution or agency, and instead ask them to find out about other programs or departments on campus that tie into the absolute priority or the invitational priority. Like they're more important now than buses or some departments that facilities or something that would we used to want to list, and now I'm like, no, I need the room for those programs. And then now I feel more of a emphasis on the last part, second part, or the last part of the applicant community support, whether you're an agency or a college, to make sure that that last table has two or three partnerships that you can tie into or connect to the invitational or absolute priority. And so I feel that, but I'm struggling because I'm having to change my formatting. And that's never fun. And I'm struggling for space right now. So if you're struggling, I'm struggling, we're all struggling through it. But right now I'm just putting it down. Then when I put it all together, I'm going to start editing. And then like I said, I'm working on the evaluation plan in my head. In the needs section, Teresa, I feel a need in the first toward the middle of the first page to mention somehow the priorities. And then I close with a mention of them. Um, the plan of operation, yes, in the opening paragraph, even in the objectives, I mention there. In the opening of the plan of operation, and then definitely when I get to the plan to deliver services, I feel the need to talk about it there. Whereas I used to focus on non-cognitive skills, I shifted and put language there to do that. So anyway, that just I'm glad to hear that you you're also, finding that to be an issue. So sometimes the newbies that don't have a set format, may be having less of a struggle. But I also wanted to ask Lourdes, because I believe, Lourdes, you participated or were part of the COE grant writing workshop. I don't know if you wanted to speak to any of that or give our EOC people a heads up in case you've had a chance to dabble in that as well.
Yeah, haven't really had a chance to spend a whole lot of time on the EOC grant. I did read through the application, and most of the information is the same as you've said. I think what was different on that first absolute priority, of course, is the high impact tutoring. That was not a part of it. Most of the other elements, we serve some of the similar geographic areas, so I'm able to use some of the data that I've already captured, for like some of my cities, for where my adults are, for from Talent Search. Um, but I've not really delved into it like I should have already. Usually I'm well more in advance, but this time it's like I think it's because, we kept expecting that we were going to see changes. And we wrote and had our first, and now it's like I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board and plug in things. And so I've not spent that amount of time as I normally would have in this grant writing season. So,
Mhm.
um,
Right? It's just been kind of crazy, everything
mhm,
together. I did want to bounce back to Teresa. You'd mentioned about the apprenticeships, that we're not used to that. But I want to stress that the way I've heard it is that we need to provide exposure or awareness. I don't want anyone to even think for a second because I had to talk myself off of that ledge too. Because initially I thought that's what was the deal. And I said, oh, I'm not going to do that part of I'm not going to address that part of the absolute priority or whichever one it falls under. Isn't I think absolute. We can't do that. And then I read it again. I said, okay, I can do. We can do this. We can provide information. We can buy connections, exposure, that kind of thing. I also had a comment for one of my clients, which is really great, looking at the plan of operation. And they were like, well, can't we add more information about goals and benchmarks? And I said, well, not here, not in the plan of
yeah.
operation. But in the evaluation plan, you're
Mhm,
right on track. In fact, we're probably going to take the same table or the same, by objective, the services, and probably come up with one internal goal for each one of those, which is different from what I've done before. I've been more about the process, like how many people get recruited, how many visits students see overall. Now I'm thinking, I'm going to do this. So that's what my evaluation plan is going to be, kind of the final, the grand finale, right? It's the last section they read. So I'm thinking this is where I can really get them. So I'm struggling now with page length because I also have to include a logic model. I know they say you don't have to, but I feel you have to. And I don't know if Lourdes and Teresa agree with me. They say you don't have to, right? They said in the webinar, but I think, what do you think, Teresa?
Yeah, it's just part of my grant
Right?
writing process is just to put a logic model in there. It does give the reader, it does show strategy around program design and evaluation. So it's just a great tool and you can put a lot of information and it gives a good snapshot of what you're actually going to be doing. And someone did ask a question, where are you putting the logic model? So I
mhm,
am putting the logic model in this grant in the evaluation. But I can see how it would fit into the plan of operation. In Gear Up, it goes more in that area.
Mhm.
But for the purpose of Trio, I don't think I think it's a good place to put into the evaluation section. But you know, um, if if you've worked with logic models, you could also put it in the program design area in the
Correct.
evaluation
You're
area.
absolutely right. I think it's a great visual also to end toward the end
Mhm.
of literally at the end, like here's a summary
Mhm.
to leave on a good note. What do you think, Lourdes?
Well, I describe my logic model within my evaluation section, but I'm like you. I keep thinking like that page limit, that page limit, that page limit, right? And so I'm going both places. Will I also include, that summary that I typically do within my evaluation section, but also include it as an attachment, because they do describe it, put it in the attachments. And so I'm wanting to hit like all bases, like everyone is, we're concerned about this. How are these readers going to be trained to look for those things? I noticed, and I didn't respond to some of the questions in here, but I noticed some folks had that question about what should I put in that other, right, in on my attachments? And that was the question, is that should I put those letters, those letters that I'm getting? And I'm just really concerned about the applicant, the size of the application. So I'm not going to include any of those letters. I know that because somebody said, do you agree with COEs that we need to attach a sample of those letters? And if I don't think that I want to, I know some folks said I'm going to attach maybe my director's um, a job description. And, they said resumes. And I'm like, we're writing this as we're a new applicant. And, we're trying to describe, who were the personnel that were needed. So I don't know that attaching a resume at this point is that important. So I'm like, I don't think I'm going to attach any resumes. But I think it might be helpful if you decide you want to attach something, make it short and sweet. Maybe like that table that we sometimes describe in the narrative of these are all the letters I got, right? And rather than something that's going to take a whole lot of pages, those individual pages eat up a lot of space that you'll need to reserve in your application. So I don't think I'm going to include all of those things. I might just say, these are documents that are kept on file, you know. So
I'm glad you brought that up because I did get the question as well about that. And
mhm,
I was told that COE said, and I said, well, did they say because the wording was just like you said, that COE said to put an
mhm, mhm,
example sample. And I said, do you mean maybe they said instead, and you were there, maybe you heard it directly, but I was thinking, I wasn't there, so I was thinking maybe they meant you should summarize or put the examples of the letters in a table within the applicant and community support.
huh?
That's where because the readers are not going to read the letters, you know. They're
No.
not,
And
they're barely getting paid enough to read the narrative. So the
mhm,
content needs to be there. I don't think the letters need to be uploaded. They just have to be ready on demand if you ever get
mhm,
asked. Go ahead. Sorry.
mhm. Yeah, and I participated again. I did it last week when they did the first technical ed, the Department of Ed technical meeting. And so I attended that one. I wanted to see if they would say anything different this time. And of course, it's a recording, but the Q&A was the most important part of it, because
Right?
they're answering some of those questions. And their take was there, don't put a whole lot of attachments. Somebody said, can you specifically spell out what I should include in the other attachments? And they just said, put the profile and of course, the other documents that we have to upload. So they were like, don't add too much to it. So
Yeah.
Someone put
yeah.
about letters of important
Mhm.
letters, and I would not. I mean, right now, to me, I guess maybe because I'm just thinking score wise, I want to get full points on the applicant and community support. So I think the content, the types of partnerships, especially with the priorities now, where I feel the focus has shifted not on just the typical HR, IT, those
Mhm.
departments, but now departments on campus like that are workforce related, or even the career center, the tutoring center, or even some of these colleges have special community programs that are through the university, that are part of the university that could possibly assist your participants as talent search, high school students, if that's, what they're doing outreach for. I feel that's more important now. And of course, you want to get these letters and have them on file just in case, but I don't feel it's necessary or important to upload them under that other attachment. I don't think that's what they meant.
Mhm.
I can't think what they were thinking, but
Mhm.
the readers are not going to see the letters. So if you have something important from important people, it needs to be what are they going to give to the project, tangible
Mhm.
resources, especially in the areas of the priorities. That needs to be in your narrative, not hidden away in the letters, because nobody is going to read those letters unless they have to, for some reason, a compliance assessment and double check that you do have commitments from these folks later on.
Mhm. There's a question in here. My grant has not met the prior experience for 22-23, but we did get 90% in 24-25. And what advice do you recommend? Um, I think the question really is about points, right? At the end of the day, how many points will I have in this competition? And we know it's going to be a fierce competition, because of the number of grants that are going to be funded. But remember, you could go into this with, the 15 prior experience points and be cut 15 points when the reader is reading your narrative if you did not answer the question. So you even though you may not have any prior experience points in all those years, except for maybe you got because you reached 90% in 24, 25, maybe you earned a few prior experience points in that year. That would put you over somebody who had 15 prior experience points and lost all those points through the reading. So don't cut yourself short. I guess that's what I want to say is that you need to go into this competition, write strong, answer all the questions to the best of your knowledge, write to those priorities, and see how it all plays out. So don't say like, I didn't earn any prior experience, therefore I'm not going to write because we don't know how this competition is going to be. We just know it's going to be fierce. I don't know. What do you think, Teresa and Lisa?
I'm sorry, I started answering questions. I'm sorry.
It's, Lourdes, you're absolutely right. You got to go for it. You never know what's going to happen, right? Miracles have
Mhm,
happened. And it could be that while they're being read, maybe they decide, oh, you know what? Because it's happened before when we were waiting to get notification. Oh, guess what? We've gone ahead and lowered the cap. So now you can only whatever we woke up and realized, oh my gosh, we're actually going to limit or we're going to cut down on so many programs and so many students across the country are going to lose access, right? So we're gonna do something with the budget or let you reapply or whatever. Who knows? So you don't want to just give up the ship and say,
I
oh,
think we
well, we don't have.
lost you. I think we lost what you were saying, Lisa. I
Am I
didn't
back?
hear. I can't hear you.
I
Can you
can
hear
hear
me,
her
Teresa?
still. Yes, I can hear her still.
Okay. I
I
can't hear.
couldn't hear you. I think I heard Teresa, but I didn't hear the last part that you said.
Did you guys lose me? Teresa,
I,
did you lose?
You're
I'm
going in
getting
and
a
out.
I'm
Yeah.
getting a message indicating my internet is unstable. I thought it was talking about me, but it's talking about my internet.
Hey, I get those all the time. So, hey, I'm not surprised. It probably was me. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, you never know what could happen, so go ahead and submit. You've got to give it a try. You've got to, so turn it in. You never know what's going to happen. It may not be as, it may not be as bad as we think. I don't know.
Mhm, yeah. And I did ask this morning because I know in the Q&A, they haven't really talked about the funding band. And so I put specifically in there, is there going to be a funding band and how much? And they said that there is going to be a funding band. They just have not yet had that conversation about what does that really look like in terms of a funding band. So,
I think the
um,
funding ban will be the tiebreaker.
mhm, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where I think everyone's going to be in the funding ban.
Yeah. But I'm thinking about in terms of this, the money, the 175 projects, and is how does that all going to play out? Because I'm not sure, Lisa, what you're feeling about how many states are going to apply for that money. How many agencies, like I mean state, agencies. So it's hard to figure out like what's going to really happen with all of this, but it all boils down to doing the best, answering those questions, ensuring we've hit on all the spots, engaging in this today, right? And asking those questions to say, how can I best respond to this? But
I still
yeah.
don't know how the states are going to get funded if they don't have any
Mhm.
prior experience points at all.
Mhm,
Even
mhm.
if they get the 5 points, it's 100 plus five. And I didn't hear anybody ask that question to the department on how they expect any of those will get funded. Here's a question about EOC. Our team of three, and you can hear me okay, are having to go up in our numbers. Yes, you'll have to increase because of the budget. What do you think about this having each advisor serve 730 and the project director 240? I'm concerned that the project director amount, but don't want to overwhelm the advisors. So, you know, I believe that's something that you will have to worry about later. And I know that sounds callous, right? Like, don't worry about it now. But honestly, you don't have a choice. You have to go up to 1100. I know with some of the new EOCs that I've had to deal with or existing, they have 1,000 participants existing, not new, existing, and only two advisors. So they're 500 each. And remember, at EOC, it doesn't mean like Talent Search where you have to have 500 active students on your caseload. It just means by the end of the year, you had to have served or provided services to 500 students, but never all at the same time, participants. Some of them you just see one time, provide two services, and then do follow up separately to find out if they went to college or not. That's something just separate, but you do what you have to do now to make the numbers work with your budget. And if you want to, I strongly recommend you let the readers know how many you anticipate. So maybe they should have 450 each so the director doesn't have so much, because they've got to do other things. I'd rather actually feel better about giving more to the advisors as long as you as the director, if you're the director, is basically going to be the admin, you're going to be the everything, the data person, so that those advisors can go out there, identify, recruit, select, and serve, and the director is going to have to pick up all the administrative piece. So they don't really have a lot of time to have a caseload as well. Lourdes, I don't know if you want to speak to that because you had an active EOC program.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, we had one of the old existing, the grants, and so we served closer to the 1800, and we had 6 staff members. And so, yeah, it was a huge number of individuals for each of the projects. But I think the question more for each one of us as we're thinking about maybe like the OC and even talent search, right? Is what is going to be realistic to the reader in terms of the services and the quality of services that you're going to be providing that you're talking about and that it relates to those required and permissible services. So can you what you were writing seem realistic? Now, what do you think, Teresa?
She's muted, I think.
No, yeah.
I,
Oh,
Teresa,
Teresa. Oh,
she was answering a question, I think.
I think she was answering a question.
I was talking to myself. I'm sorry. I was writing and talking to myself. I'm sorry. I was
Hey,
not.
at
I
this
was not
stage,
engaged.
at,
Mhm,
I'm
at
sorry. I'm
this
trying to
stage,
respond to the Q&A.
mhm,
But I'm back.
mhm,
well, something just popped up. There's a I see what you're doing, Teresa. Yeah, yeah, I see what you're doing. Anyone else that is in the logic model? Well, while you're typing on that, Lourdes, a question popped up and I asked a question back. You know me, whenever you ask me a question, I ask you 10 questions back before I feel I can give you the answer. Maybe I'm slow trying to eat up time to figure out
Mhm.
what to tell you. But someone said the plan of operation used to have 6 questions and now there's only 5. So I was like, which one's missing?
mhm,
It hasn't changed.
mhm. Yeah, I don't,
So,
yeah,
so
for EOC or for EOC, I haven't looked at the plan of ops,
Oh,
so.
I haven't looked for you. So I
Mhm,
assumed it was Talent Search. So
mhm,
please
yeah.
pop up and let us know which one is missing. Um, what about the double spacing? I think Diane, if you could, if that question you had earlier was about Talent Search, the plan of operation, you said one of the subsections is missing. If you could let us know which one, because I didn't think one was missing. But I could be wrong. Um,
Yeah, I
Okay,
think one
during
is.
the Q&A, they stated that double space charts is only recommended. They've stated that the last, gosh, 5 or 6 competitions. And what I've done with my charts, I've gotten rid of some of them because I'm cutting down on all the narrative, where I was using charts in areas where it was like step 1, step 2, step 3, like a policies procedures manual. So I don't feel that's going to be the focus as much as some other areas. So I took them out of the charts. I condensed them. I made them, I revised them, made them shorter and sweeter, I think.
Mhm.
Um, of course, if you're going to do your policies procedures manual, the plan to identify, the plan to inform needs to be made out more detailed to actually make it happen. But in the proposal, the best you could do is do a summary of that, and you can't put dates or all that stuff in there like before. I need the room. So based on that, I've have fewer tables and charts, but the tables and charts that I do have, it says it's recommended. I don't have anything. Let me take it back. My headers are single space, but inside the charts to make it easier to read, I'm either at 1.5 or 1.15. I'm not putting it single spaced anyway. So,
And
you know,
Lisa, at the technical reviews, I mean the technical assistance workshop that I attended, that was a question that was asked, and they said that the charts could be single spaced. And it may show up in the FAQs. I don't know if they've released the FAQs or not, but that may show up in the FAQs.
Mhm.
So
okay.
that was definitely something I wanted to get more clarification
Mhm.
on. And it's
Yeah.
been written, even it was written in Gear Up. It was written, I don't know about Gear Up, but it was written like in other grants as well. And every time we get on the technical workshops, they end up saying that it can be single spaced. So
Mhm.
that's just kind of
And
like the
this morning,
pattern I've seen.
mhm. And this morning, sorry, Teresa, this morning they did say also because, we're trying to get feelers from them, right? And they're not, being able to respond specifically, but they did say that they're not going to post those Q&As to the department's website until they finish up all of these technical sessions. So it's probably going to be at least maybe the end of this week. I think they finish up this week. So hopefully we'll see those listed. But even at that, I don't think they even did it last year when they said they would put those responses up in the last cycle. So I'm not holding my breath. So I try to attend more sessions and try to ask the question again. But what they did say this morning is that make it easy for the reader to be able to understand what you're talking about. So in thinking and they reminded us again, and this was again reminded by COE, is that they're not requirements, they're recommendations in terms of formatting. So, but I'm like you all, I worry, right? Because it's the recommendation. But at the end of the day, I think about like what's going to be easier for the reader. Will they see that chart? They're going to have to read that chart over 2 pages because of the page break. And in that case, it's going to be more important for me to say, you know what, it needs to be single spaced on that page so that the reader says, okay, you're providing the data, and I can
And
see that.
I think it's harder when it's single space, so that's why I do the 1.5, but it actually gets
Mhm.
weird if it's double
Mhm.
spaced or
Yeah. Oh yeah.
1.5. It's real awkward as well. So that fine
Mhm.
tuning. So I would recommend
One
either
point.
1.15, 1.15, or 1.5. So I could
Mhm.
say, hey, it's not single spaced, but they're saying single
Mhm.
spaced, but I don't like it single spaced either. It's too scrunched up for
Yeah.
me. So,
Mhm.
someone said I interpreted, I think this was the question about the letter. I interpreted as including the mandatory letters based on your entity type. So I believe that question may be for those folks that are trying to get the 5 CPP points for being a state agency, a state educational
Mhm.
agency. So yes, for those of you, you will have to upload according to the program profile form. If you are going for that CPP, then you have to provide a letter from the governor's office, I believe. And that has to be uploaded. So Lourdes, that's probably one of the other things you have to upload for sure. And I believe that when they reference that, they're talking about that. But for everybody else out there, I'm not telling my clients to upload any. I wouldn't recommend. Really, you could upload whatever you want, but I wouldn't recommend it unless I do have a client who's going for the state and they would have to get a state grant. But they're an existing talent search, so they got prior experience points plus the 5 points, but they have to upload that letter.
Mhm.
Um, in our last grant, we cut out 2 middle schools, but still served them in the grant cycle because they were probably in your target area. If we
That's
want
okay.
to have them back in the grant, would we lose our PE points? The question is, do you need to have them back in the grant? I mean, are you doing fine without them? But if you want to include them, Lourdes, I don't think that's a problem going up. I think it's when you try to reduce your target
Mhm.
schools.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lisa. It's when you reduce those, when you try to reduce the number of schools, because now you're really changing the scope of your project. And so, yeah, I think you're okay if you bring them back in, but I think we get caught on doing the way we traditionally have always done things with talent search. But remember, folks, we define a target area, um, because you can serve the target area. You don't have to be just at your target schools. And in this new application, we're also talking about individuals. There's more of that reliance of individuals who are no longer in your schools and trying to get them back into schools. And also, getting them to think about this workforce, and being prepared, right? And the pre-apprenticeships and apprenticeships. So, so don't limit yourself in thinking like I have to keep adding schools to get to those additional numbers.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Lourdes, because the main thing is about going down.
Hmm.
But if you
Yeah.
need to include and only include, only bring them back if across the board they're showing need. You
Hmm.
can't bring anybody in that's gonna, maybe that one school you're bringing in is showing need except in one area. Well, be prepared to lose a point, for example, in the college enrollment table, where you have to list each of the schools individually. And even though the average may show need when compared to the state or national rate, if that one of those schools you're bringing in, or that wouldn't be that appropriate for the middle school, but you know what I'm saying, in persistence, if their persistence is high, then it might hurt you to bring them in. So I'm assuming you've already checked to make sure across the board they're showing need. It's a struggle with the schools we want to keep to show need across the board. So you definitely, when you want to bring somebody in to get more numbers, you may not be able to bring them in if they are not showing need in all the tables across the need section. Um, are you mentioning, I love this question, are you mentioning the average of contacts you will provide on average to participants? I know that two is required. Are you saying that? That the participants will receive an average of? I never commit to say that they will get an average of. I say the plan. How often do we plan to see them? What are scheduled? Are we going to are we going to try? Do we plan to see them in group sessions once every 6 weeks, once every 8 weeks? And then I have where scheduled visits on our calendar, but I never commit that the student will receive. And I used to have an internal goal that said a certain percentage, not 100%, but a certain percentage would receive this many services and try to approve upon it in the evaluation plan, not as an objective. I never said 100%, but I'm going to kick that to the curb and now focus on making sure I have internal goals for some of the major like tutoring, and exposure to or information about something to do with the priorities. Okay, instead of focusing on trying to say that a certain percentage of students every year will have basically more than the two that are the bare minimum. But you don't have to commit to that. There's also a question about caseloads. You could say approximately in planning, how many, just to give a little bit more information, but it doesn't lock you in if you use the word approximately or a caseload of planned, because, stuff could happen. So that's what I do there. But, that's what I would recommend. But I don't want you guys to put in there that a certain percentage of students will receive this many services, because then that could be painting yourself into a corner, and you don't want to do that. Lourdes, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I try to keep that at a
Hmm.
mention it, but don't go on and on about it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't specifically write in mind that they're going to serve that, what the specific caseload is going to be. Um, because I don't want to also tie myself in. I guess it's all about what can you realistically do given your in within your plan of operation, the service delivery of those services again, and is it realistic that you're going to have a particular number of advisors who are going to be giving advice to these students. Remember, in the needs section, we're already telling them how they're not getting those services from because of the number of the
Uh-oh, she frozen, or is it
counselor,
me?
to student ratio. The same thing that they're not going to get that information and that critical advice from your staff. So you want to be careful about that. What realistically can we do to support and make this work? So it's really about what are you thinking about what staffing structure you need. And in some cases, you might have to start looking at the director if you're going to increase your numbers. Maybe they're going to take a small caseload as well to help reach those numbers. Um,
Mhm.
so I don't know, that's my thought on that. I mean, is it in my mind, is it in concrete stone yet? No, not yet, because again, everything I'm still working on my plan of operation. I'm still trying to figure out what realistically, in terms of what we're saying we're going to do, is this going to work?
Mhm,
Um, because,
mhm.
because at the end of the day, it has to work, right?
getting great ideas from you all with your
Mhm.
questions is making me think, oh, let me go do this. And then I have to think, well, you know what? Last time around, I felt it was really important to state the caseload. This time, I don't feel that urgency. I feel there's been a shift in focus. You know what I'm saying? A
Mhm.
shift in focus. It's okay. It just takes it doesn't take too much space, but I
Mhm.
felt more strongly about it before than I do now. Okay. Just
Mhm.
like, well, here's a question real quick. Not real quick, but can you clarify, and Teresa, I may need your expertise on this one, but can you clarify and let me put in my simple mind how I see the difference between the performance measures versus the objectives. I participated in the COE proposal writing workshop, did attend the evaluation session, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. So let me tell you how I see this. The performance measures are for the One Talent Search National Program. Okay. That is what, because we're projects that belong to the One National Program. Think of it like the One National Program in DC. This is their objectives, which are called performance measures. Then we have our individual project objectives that they've mandated that all the projects have. But there's some connection because a lot of the performance measures are almost identical to our objectives, except that there's always been an extra one about what's that last one, Lord? It's about the cost of the
Just
efficiency.
that for
Okay, and people
applicants.
have been like, how am I supposed to figure that out? And I'm like, that's not on you.
Okay.
That's on
Mhm.
the national program when they collect and look at our budgets, and that's an extra objective the national program does. But when you look at the other performance measures, they kind of line up with our objectives. The difference is this time they've added on, and it's off the top of my head now, so don't quote me, but for both the college enrollment one and the college post-secondary attainment, they've added something about what careers
Enrollment,
or
Tips.
enrollment in apprenticeships, registered apprenticeships and completion of registered apprenticeships. Mhm.
for the attainment, and then the other one, yeah, there's enrollment and completion.
Mhm.
So the National Talent Search Program has modified those performance measures and added on the or, not the and. So a student does not have to go to college and also get into apprenticeship. It's one or the other. So if anything, they've given themselves a break where now they at the national level can count whether a student goes to college or goes into apprenticeship is considered a positive. Whereas before, if they only went to college and if they went to apprenticeship anyway on their own, it wasn't captured. So that's why I see that in our future APR, there's going to have to be a question on our APR asking us how many of our seniors went to college and how many went into an apprenticeship, which was never been there before. It's not an objective, but it's something that they have to ask because the national program, has to report that as their performance measure. Is that kind of a okay assessment, Teresa?
Yes, and I'll just add to what you said that they can find the performance measures in the common instructions. That's where they can find it because it's not, they've trimmed this application guidance down so much, and so that's where they can find the performance measures.
And they actually have it listed in a little short box within the RFP for talent search. It's in there. It's a short box. And what I would recommend is that you acknowledge those in the beginning of your evaluation plan. That your project has objectives that are based on the following performance measures. And they're not, I mean, you could actually use that same table. It's so short and sweet in that table, but I feel it's important to acknowledge it and to realize the difference is that you all have objectives or have to provide objectives that feed into the performance measures, not to mean that you should have an objective on the post-secondary, I mean, apprentice enrollment and apprenticeship attainment, but that's something that you're aware that you need to track and that your performance report will ask you. You notice on our performance report, they ask us a whole bunch of stuff that we're like, how does this relate to the objective? Well, it relates to the performance measures that we usually don't think about. Okay, we usually don't think about those. And now I want you to start looking at them and saying, okay, I see the connection. I see but hey, this is a little different. Or what about this about the cost, how effective the cost is? How the heck are we going to do that? They're not asking you to do that directly. They get it from when we turn in our budgets and our performance, and they come up with that sort of headache to measure to evaluate the talent search program, one program, the national program as a whole, because we are projects part of that program.
And
So
Lisa,
hopefully that was helpful.
you definitely want to list them. You could potentially lose points if you do not list all of those performance measures in your evaluation section.
I can see that we can almost like force or do a table where we have the performance measures and our objectives lining up, you know, nicely to show the connection along with our internal goals.
Mhm.
And here we're kind of working on the logic model in a sense,
Mhm,
right? That not
mhm,
so that can
mhm,
actually tie into that. Maybe
mhm,
that's where it comes up, or you repeat it. I think it's real important, and then that way you'll also have the connection as well. If we take out a target school due to stats that don't show strong need, can we technically still have the advisor go to meet with students like we normally would? Not like you normally would. As long as that target school is still within your target area, you can still continue to go there, but you can't go there like you normally do. The definition of a target school is that it's the focus or
Can you hear her?
I think she froze.
Yeah.
Mhm. I couldn't tell if it was momentary. It was kind of like my internet unstable. Mm, mm. Okay, I think what they're saying that is that you can't normally, because normally if it's a school that like you were normally working with them before, you have an agreement with them, right? You have those letters of support and commitment to be working with them. And and oftentimes if you want to add them, as a normal school, then it might be construed as a change in scope because you're now going to work with them at a totally different level. And in those cases, you would have to work with your program specialist to say, I'm going to now start, working more with these schools. Because remember, when we're submitting the annual performance report, you can't just automatically add in a new school. You have to have the permission from the program specialist to say, I'm going to work with that school as I have with all these other schools that I've made some agreements. So I think that what Lisa was hitting on there is that you don't work with them as you normally do with all those other individuals that you've added onto your profile and said these are where the focus of my energies in recruitment are going to be. So Teresa, go ahead and add, and I see Lisa's back to you. So
a back.
and so Teresa, please add
Yeah,
your
so
thoughts as well. Mhm.
definitely yeah, so in addition, just I mean, and the way that you serve just looks different. It may be not if you have that you're going to be going to your target schools once a month, four times a semester, or once a month, once a month, four times per semester, which will be eight per year. Then basically, that probably, if that's your normal, then probably that would not be what you do with the non-target schools.
Mhm.
So the dosage would be probably a lot less. And that goes into a question that someone asked that leads us right into how many target schools is too many. We currently have two middle schools and five high schools. I am thinking about adding a sixth charter high school. The philosophy that I've pretty much used is less is better. If you have enough students that you can serve within your target school, it's not just a yes or no answer. It's really about understanding what your capacity is, understanding that people have to drive to different sites. Now, if you're rural, of course, it looks a lot different from if you're urban, but when you're in an urban area, it is, if you have more, if you're able to decrease the number of target schools and serve the maximum number of students in that school, then that would be ideal. However, that does not mean that you can't serve more schools.
And it all depends on, like Teresa said, it all depends. I could be in an urban area and get all my students at one high school. That's it. Or I could be totally rural. You need to make sure that you have enough of a pool of eligible students So your hands may be tied. That's the first thing. Do I have enough? So it's not really about the number of schools, but I will tell you, I see people, I think usually I see people have too many schools, right, Teresa? Too many schools because back in the day it was better. It actually looked better. And I think maybe they favored projects that served a lot of schools. Now it's about the students. You could get them at just one school or a handful of schools. And if you have them in smaller schools, it's better, it's easier to manage and also budget wise. But if you're rural, you may not have a choice. You may have to spread out and have many schools. Okay. So it all depends. Don't you love that answer? It all depends on your situation. Sorry. It all depends. Um, so we have a question here about administrative assistant. Do you want to handle that one, Lourdes? See that
Let me read the
question?
question.
We've always had an administrative assistant
One or
at the
more of the
school on
grants will not
multiple
get
grants.
funded. Hmm. So that is, and I think it's not just the administrative assistant. I know the question comes up all the time about the project director too. If the project director is shared on more than one grant and you run the risk of losing one of the grants, right? I mean, that's a risk that we take when we do write, for a director that is 50-50. Is that, and especially at these times, right, because of the fierce competition. Would it be wise to write the position of the proposal, but if one or more don't get funded, then make a modification, since the salary would be too large for one grant? Again, I think when instances like that have happened, is you almost have to look internally at, what that particular position do I want to keep, and am I able to, not so much that I want to, but am I able to fund that position? For an example, administrative assistant, can the percentage that you have on that particular grant, can another project support so that that person, is continued to work full time? It is all going to look at what resources do you have available. We lost one of our programs, and so we had to do just that. Were the other programs that we had able to support those positions so that that individual could continue working full time? We also had to look at not just other federal monies, but institutional money and support, because that's going to be a question that comes up not just for that administrative assistant, but other projects as well. I mean, other positions as well, because it's hard to tell at this time. It's like how we're going to manage those positions if we don't have the resources. So I know
Someone
it's a
asked,
great question. Mhm,
it is a great question, and you can't have definite, you just have to move
mhm,
forward, right, Lourdes? And
mhm,
and
mhm,
can't plan, you plan for the best, right? Plan for the
mhm.
best. And someone asked about high quality tutoring. You can, you want to explain it or spell it out to the reader like this is, but technically I put a definition there. I hope it's still there when you see the answered questions, you can see that. But typically it's described as structured, small group or individualized academic support, that's connecting with students' coursework. You want to stress that. And that's why I've urged a lot of my clients to go for more money, a little bit more money, not crazy to eat up all the pot of money, right? But a lot of them, if they stayed at their number, they'd have to cut their budget. So that's not an option, right? And then some of them were saying, well, I'm just going to, if I have to serve X, Y, I'm just going to do that times 500 and just sit at that. And I said, yeah, but that's not going to give you money to do the high quality tutoring, the high impact tutoring, or to implement those connections to the absolute priority or invitational priority, those things they mentioned. You're going to need some money. So I've urged almost all my clients to bump it up just a little bit more so it gives them about 15 to $20,000 extra, not enough to hire a full-time person or even a part-time person, but to put that in the high quality tutoring, high impact tutoring, and also into the online tutoring and those resources that we can use for the talent marketplace, those digital wallets, not to create them, but make connections in the resources and platforms. Some of them are free, but some of them cost money. And so that's why I'm urging them to put the money in there. But you want to go ahead and say that, tutoring materials maybe, or speak a little bit to why the tutoring, why your explanation is for high quality tutoring. But there is a definition that I put in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay.
Mhm.
Is there a maximum percentage for salaries and friends should take up on the grant? There's no max, but it used to state that if it's over 20%, which it's got to be, if you got a less than 20% fringe, let's talk. I don't know how that's happening. So if it's over 20% was the rule before in the narrative that you'd have to break it down in your budget. I don't know if it's still there. I have not looked, but there's no cap. I have some clients that are at 65% fringe, one that's at 73%
Oh my
fringe.
gosh.
It is what it is.
Uh-huh.
It is what it is. You can't mess with that. You definitely don't want to bring it down thinking it's going to hurt you because guess what? That who's going to pay for it? So
Mhm.
your budget should be sucked up by two things, personal and fringe. Personnel and fringe. That it should be 85% of your budget, close to 80% of your budget, those two things. Make sure you pay your folks. Make sure you max out on fringe estimated because it can't be perfect. It's not an accounting thing, but it's just to make sense. So there's no maximum, but when you talk about the fringe and the budget narrative, you want to break it down. If it is 73%, how much of each individual benefit equals so that it adds up to 73%. And that's just a big, crazy kind of example. But they're
Mhm.
usually what I see most of the time 45, 50%, 38%. I think I do have someone who's at 25%, but
Mhm.
it's all over the place.
Mhm.
Um, can you talk
There was,
about
there was
Go ahead.
comment
Go
just
ahead,
real
Lori.
quickly because I apologize. I was supposed to monitor the chat. Let's see. I'm going to have to work backwards. The last one says we use Bloomin. I've seen that they've already added some tracking to the database. It's wonderful, but please know that we don't know what the APR, the final APR, is going to look like. We don't know how they're going to ask that question. We will probably see. Bloomin will most likely, as with any other database, is probably going to have to change once the APR comes out, and or maybe even if it comes out for comment, how they're going to track, those registered apprenticeships and things. I like to think of something like we respond to now in our Talent Search APRs, and they ask us a strict number. How many of those students participated in CPP 1 or CPP 2, and so on. So it could be as easy as that, or it could be a little bit more. So I'm glad that Bloomin is thinking about that. But I think when it's all said and done, we won't really know that till those APRs come out.
Right.
So,
You're exactly
mhm,
right on what needs to
mhm,
happen. Just mention that your database will
mhm,
accommodate or
yep,
will adapt to any future
mhm,
requirements in the annual performance report, if you'd like to state that. Teresa, I think you're
yeah,
handling the indirect
mhm,
rate and also the funding ban. Can you? And then about this new proposal of a
mhm.
CPP. I was going to talk about the staffing structure and titles you suggest we use. All right. So if you're going for new funding, when you do the budget, you're not going to have money for an admin. There's just no way, especially right now with this cap. So I know I'd love to have an admin too. I never had an admin until I had 3 or 4 trio programs and I could split, right? Teresa, how long did I have an admin at the Boys and Girls Club? Never until we got our second, or I think until we got our second talent
Mhm.
search and our first upward bound. And I could split somebody, Diana. Remember Diana Callison? I could split her 3 ways across the board. But no. So if you're going for new funding, I don't think you can. I don't think you'll be able to do it. And I would not focus on that. You could always try to find money for that. But on the staffing structure, you're going for new funding. If it is new funding, full-time director. You can ask later maybe to make it half-time, but a full-time director and at least 2 full-time staff advisors. It would look weak if you just have one director and one advisor to serve 500 students. I mean, that would be my preference. I would tell a new client, or I wouldn't, not working with any new, that should let you know something. But if I were, I tell them, we cannot take any money away from tutors for an admin. No, no. Later on, maybe, but an admin is like a dream position later on. And I always use, no matter what the agency or the university calls or whatever HR calls the positions, I try to simplify it for the dear sweet reader. Whenever I can, I tell, look, we got to call it
Mhm.
project director, project advisor, project tutors, and if you're lucky enough to be an older program who's split, that administrative assistant is split, a project administrative assistant, even though they may be called a coordinator or a student specialist level 2 or a branch manager level 5, whatever. I'm not telling you to change those titles. For the proposal, please simplify it and use titles that describe the position. No one would ever question, well, what's a branch manager or a project coordinator? To me, that could mean an administrative assistant or an assistant director. But if you say assistant director, and some of my clients are working with, they don't, they're a part-time director and they don't want to, or they cannot promote someone to be assistant director. So maybe we say, well, can they be a lead advisor? Something like that. So anyway, just to answer that question. And Teresa's answering about the funding band. And can we reshuffle our personnel budget after we get funded with approval, of course? Well, actually, depending on the situation, these proposals, correct me if I'm wrong, Lourdes and Teresa, these, to me, I call them my placeholder budgets. They're to get us through to make sense to the reader. After you get funded, you have to turn in a budget. I mean, you could try to turn in the same budget if you wanted to, or you could redo the whole darn thing. You could, because that's when you get approval directly from the program officer for your budget on an annual basis. So yes, and at any time, if you've got surplus and personnel and fringe, you need to check with your institution because usually your institution gets nervous about taking money out of personnel and fringe, even though it's over, it's money that hasn't won't be spent out. They get nervous because they want to make sure people get paid. But federally speaking, you can take unused or carry over funds that will not be used because people got hired later. You can move them to any part of the budget. Um, as long as your institution has not been put on route payment or any other restriction. But usually your business office has to always approve internally those transfers. So I think you'll get more questions or needing approval internally than you will externally. Lourdes and Teresa, can you account to that?
Go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, it's just important to be conscious about the when you're moving the money and where you're moving it to, and just know that, I mean, it is a natural element of positions or situations changing once you've actually been funded. You just got to know when to reach out to your program officer versus it being an institutional decision, like Lisa just talked about with moving money and transferring money. A lot of it is an institutional decision, and there should be rules in place for that to occur.
So don't go back saying Lisa said I could do whatever I want. No, I didn't say that. I said you federally speaking, but unless they put other in your GAN, they put something else in there, or you've been put on notice, so to speak, or your institution, probably you're completely innocent, but something happened somewhere else. But then you internally you'll get questioned more on your transfers. Okay.
Mhm,
There's only certain times where you need prior approval, and that's usually
mhm,
whenever you take away from student
mhm.
participant support costs, student travel, anything directly related to student services, you will have to get prior approval from your program officer. Lourdes?
I wanted to add that, this is new experience for us, this transfer, this collaboration between the Department of Ed and Department of Labor, and something that we saw in this application about the budget in that they said if they don't agree with the budget, they're going to cut it, right? They're going to, so we have to make it as realistic as possible with what we think we need to be successful in implementing this program. We don't know how that's going to play out. Typically, we've been in this game for a long time, Teresa and Lisa, in that, they tell us you've been selected for funding, now give us your revised budget. Once, and that's when we would typically negotiate those positions, right? We tell them about the director, we tell them about, these shared positions and whatnot. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how that's going to happen. I'm hoping it's still going to happen in that same way that we've done it in the past. But who knows? What we do know is that this said is if it's not realistic, they may cut our budget. They may say, we're going to fund you, but we're going to give you X amount of dollars. And maybe that's what we see on our GAN, our grant award notification. And then we need to make it work. And so Um,
That's true,
yep.
Lourdes. It could be
Hmm.
that when we get our award notification, say, "Oh, never mind. I know you asked for to double your numbers, but we decided no, it's going to be
Hmm.
this much. Turn in a new
Hmm.
budget.
Yep.
This lower amount so that we could serve more programs."
Hmm. Yep. So we don't, so there's not there, it's not known, right? Because of this new element that they have added in. So,
Mhm.
but I do want to give them something that's realistic. What do we typically need to make this work?
Yeah, don't make it a fantasy budget, but
No.
don't worry about it being something you audit or like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, it's a penny off, or that's not the real fringe, or we got to figure out per person. Right now, we're guesstimating and going up a little higher than we need in fringe. Plan
Mhm.
for what you think the salaries will be for the positions. Make sure you take care of your people, and because they're the ones that are going to make it work. As you know, this program is people, service delivery. We don't have a lot of bells and whistles. This priority in a way is, I think, more than ever, making sure we have enough for some bells and whistles that we can't produce ourselves, but can
Mhm.
pay, through a third party vendor to make that connection. So the budget's even tighter than before, but that's what you want to focus on, making sure that it makes sense, and when they compare it to the plan of operation, that the positions that you put in the budget and in the are mentioned somehow in the quality of personnel and also throughout the plan of operation where applicable. There should be a connection, okay, to that. So it's not completely off. So when I get to the budget, should not be the first time I realize you have tutors or the first time I realize you have an admin assistant. They never
Mhm.
mentioned them throughout the proposal. I never saw them at all. So just
Mhm.
make sure whoever is listed on your final budget has been mentioned where, what, when needed in the other sections of the narrative. Okay.
Mhm.
So we're about 6 minutes over. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Lourdes. I want to say Maria when I look at, but you're Lourdes to me. Donna and Leah and everyone out there for joining us. We'll have the recording ready for you overnight. And good luck and keep writing. And you've helped me come up with some more ideas. My head is swimming right now with some great ideas. And of course, speaking with Teresa and Lourdes, I always get a lot of good ideas to go back and now and tweak and update my narratives. Thank you all so much, y'all. Take care. Thank you, ladies. Thanks,
Thanks
Donna.
again. Hi, everyone.
And Donna, this is exactly why we leave you as the host, because you never know when my internet is going to go out. I'm hardwired. I don't know what else to do besides build my own, I don't know, satellite. Maybe I should go and get a satellite put in. I just don't know what happened. Thank you all so much. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.